Okay, I think we can get started now. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Heather Gatney, and I'm the coordinator of the CVFS webinar series. Our host today is Dirga Gamiri, research professor at the Population Studies Center at ISR. Dirga is going to explain how the CVFS tracks and collects data from migrants. And he's also going to present some results from his work investigating the consequences of international migration. So like our previous webinars, we will have a Q&A after the presentation. We ask that you remain muted until then. During the Q&A, you can then unmute and ask your question, or you can submit a question at any time today using the chat feature. We'd also like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this point. A recording of this webinar and the slides will soon be available on the CVFS website. If you go to the past webinars page, that's where you can find slides and recordings of all of our webinars that have been hosted to date. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Dirga.
Okay, thank you, Heather, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this session of our webinar series. As Heather mentioned, today I will be, sharing our experiences in collecting migration data from Chitwan Valley Family Study. Today, my talk will revolve around the overview of migration research, a very brief overview, and some of the methodological challenges that all migration studies face, and CVFS migration data collection approaches and strategy. Although human population has been mobile throughout the history of mankind, more people are geographically mobile today than any point in human history. This has been a new normal for many people, especially in low-income settings. That's true in high-income setting too, but it is more common in low-income settings. This makes it very important topic for research as well as for policymakers. A few reasons why it is important to study migration is to investigate both the predictors, what makes people to move from one place to another place, and its multiple consequences on individual, household, and community, both in the place of origin as well as in the destination communities. So it becomes very important. Plus, in addition to these multi-factor consequences, sometimes panel studies also have migration as a component of their study to keep or to understand the consequences of attrition in the panel studies. That is required to maintain representativeness of the sample. Because of those reasons, perhaps migration is one of the extensively studied subject, both substantively as well as from a methodological perspective across many disciplines: sociology, demography, economics, environment, geography is even more, and political science. These studies have been successful in investigating predictors of migratory behavior. Most common hypothesis is push-pull. Economists love this hypothesis, and they argue that the wage difference between two places is the major factor for people to move from one place to another place. But there are several other explanations now. And this study also focus on economic consequences to sending communities through cash remittance and loss of labor. And There are several other studies that focus on health consequences, both at the origin and destination, such as sexually transmitted diseases, HIV/AIDS, and many other health consequences. Likewise, more recently, the migration studies are slowly moving toward understanding or investigating social consequences for the people who are at the origin or as well as at the destination. Women, consequences for women, children, and elderly has been some of the major focus. But at the same time, there are also some studies that they looked at, changes in the family system, children's education, health, and well-being. Likewise, more recently, there are studies that focus, call it social remittance. That is defined as changes in migrants' value, beliefs, and skills. Sometimes experience, some people include experience too. So these studies have been highly successful in investigating our understanding, improving our understanding about these issues. However, almost all of these studies face several challenges. So the multidimensional nature of migration make it very difficult to study. First, it involves at least two places, origin and destination. So when we say origin, we need to define what we mean by origin. Is it internal migration, and moving from one village to another village is we define it as migration, or is it regional migration, or is it international migration? Destination is a little bit, destination, yeah, that's relative. And then international migration is a little bit easier because those are, defined by the political boundaries of countries or nations. So whenever we think about migration or people's movement, we need to think about from where they are moving to where. And yeah, it is also important. Here I am mostly referring to out migration, but there is also a whole lot of things, a whole lot of studies. They focus on in migration, like how would some people moving into your area affect the life and livelihood of the people in that area, in the destination area. Next, it involves a duration, which makes it even more complicated. And how would you define, for how many days, or how many weeks, or how many months somebody has to be away from somewhere, place of origin, and then that would count as a migration. So we need to think about that, and several migration scholars debate about that. And from my perspective, what I think is it is important to think, think in terms of what's the purpose of your study. If it is seasonal migration, maybe shorter duration would be more beneficial. Whereas if it is, if there is a regulated migration, like you go for 2 years at one time, that might be different duration. Migration is not a single event, but it is a process that occurs over time. People move from one place to another place. Sometimes it could be a transition place. Sometimes it could be just final destination, or they might come back and go again in the same place, or they might go to first place, and then from there they might go to another place. So it is quite complicated, and that makes it difficult to study migration and impact of migration. Experiences, behavior, and intention can change over time. Yeah, we have seen that. Yeah, as people experience new things, their behavior and intention keep changing. and more importantly, this mobile population, when they change the residence, even in the same country or employer, that makes it even harder to find the migrants and study them. CVFS, as I said earlier, I will use the CVFS as an example for giving you our approaches for migration data collection. CVES, as you all know, CVFS is a multi-level mixed method 26-year panel study. As with all other mixed method data collection, I would like to remind that weaknesses of any approach is compensated by the strength of another approach. That's why we integrate multiple approaches to collect migration data. Retrospective approach, prospective approach, and hybrid approach. In our retrospective approach, we use a life history calendar, although there is empirical evidence that life history calendar improves and minimize the recall biases. Still, this is a retrospective approach, and in this approach, what we do is collect the history of migration throughout the respondent lives. You could also choose to do first, a shorter period, but in our case, we did it, or we collected the migration history using a life history calendar. So this approach has a couple of strengths and a couple of weaknesses. Just to mention a few examples, strength would be if you have a life history calendar, you are going to get a full history of migration for that person. As a weakness, there might be some recall biases built in that in your measurement, so you have to make that judgment. Our prospective approach is what we call it household registry. After we launched the baseline survey in 1996, we started this prospective monthly prospective household registry system, and in that system I don't know how clear it is because I have to shrink the the instrument to put in one page, so it may not be readable, but there are columns like we measure the living arrangement in a monthly basis, like monthly measures of living from the time respondents move to the sample household. All those who were in the baseline, they are all included, and anybody who moves into the sample household, we included them, and we record their living arrangement. To record it, time unit is month, defined as lived at the location for more than 15 days. And then we also supplement this, household registry system with what we call it OASIT, that records the purpose of the migration, and also whether that the household expect the migrant to send money back to the household or not. So this is a prospective. So and the strength is you have less recall bias, but you don't have a migration history for the whole period. If somebody was born in this household and continue to live until today, yes, we do have complete history of that person in household registry. But if somebody moves into the household at a certain age, then we don't have that. But if you combine household life history calendar and household registry, you might be able to create the migration, whole history of migration for that person. The next one is hybrid approach. Okay, so in terms of, in addition to household registry, We also did a prospective, we also use a prospective approach in two other surveys. That is Nepali Migrant to Gulf Cooperation Council survey, country survey, and innovative to the methods for obtaining survey data from migrant. These are the two surveys we did in 18 months apart. We did two waves of surveys, and we collected the prospective data on those. In addition to this, retrospective and prospective, we also I labeled it as a hybrid approach. You may not agree with me, but the reason I said it hybrid approach is we took the prospective information from the household registry and pre-edited this calendar and asked about their previous history. In this case, we are using remittance. So what we did here is, if you look at the rows, we took out the information from the household registry if a member of that household was away. The name of the person, the year timing that that person is left the home, and the destination country or district. We pre-edited that into this calendar. Then we started asking, whether that person send money back to home or not, and if that person sent the money, how much it is. So for this study, what we did is we collected the data in 2072, that's the Nepali year, and we went back up to 2064. Almost 10 years we went, yeah, some people might still say that these are the retrospective reports of remittance received by a household. So, but we are hoping that this, mixing this prospective information, adding a memory key, giving them the memory cues to the household respondent, household interview respondent, we think greatly improve the memory and minimize the recall bias, and we are close to the real number. I want to warn, our objective was to collect the amount of remittance received by the household on an annual basis from several different members who were away from home. But this also has, whenever you are trying this approach, you should consider what we'll consider, or what we learn during this process is remittance not only always send money to the household head or one person at home. Number one, the migrant might send to two persons, to his or her parents, as well as his or her spouse. And the second is they might send some other relatives. Outside of home. So, at the beginning we were thinking like, yeah, we are going to have a complete picture of remittance. But, because of those issues, sometimes those migrants send money to even to, unrelated people. So it was a little difficult because after we learned, we faced that challenge, we did interview all the other members of the household who were potentially received the remittance from the migrant. That's how we collected this remittance calendar. I labeled it as a hybrid approach, and we believe this improved our measurement of retrospective measures of remittance in our study settings. So CVFS tracks all the people, wherever they go, around the globe. And I am sure you will not be able to see the number inside those dots. So inside those dots, there are numbers, and those are the migrant in each of those country or each of those district. So we track them. And one more thing I want to caution is this is for one time period. So and be careful when you are thinking about, oh yeah, CVFS has this many migrants. That might change next month. That might change next month. So yeah, we need to be careful of that time dimension in the dynamics of this data. Now, so why we are so successful in collecting the migrants data, both within Nepal and around the globe. So we adapted, best practices from survey research, methods, and utilize them into integrate into our strategy. CVFS migrant data collection strategy. First, we build on an ongoing panel study. That is our, we have that luxury, but a lot of people who are starting a new project will not have that. Relying on ongoing contact with migrant household at the place of origin, utilizing multiple social network to update contact information, employing mixed method multi-mode data collection and state of the art of technology, data collection over an extended period of time, and exercising flexibility in data collection or in the study period, and tailoring interview situation to fit with the respondent backgrounds. Those are our principal strategies, and I will walk through by each. Built on previous work to identify migrants. So I already, said this, how we define the migrant. We don't need to repeat this. Next, we rely on ongoing contact with a migrant household at the place of origin. But again, as I said, these population or the migrants are always very mobile and always moving and changing. So the information you have, you have collected previously, sometimes work and sometimes doesn't work. So before we started this migrant survey, we conducted a brief survey at the time of the household survey to get information about addresses, migrant addresses, telephone number, email, and whether the migrant plan to return to origin place. Effort to collect residential address was not very successful because in our CVFS sample, most migrants were in the Gulf country for labor migration. So they reside on labor camp and they don't have individual residential address. So that was not that successful. Email and internet was a little value during 2009 and 2013 survey. So that was also not helpful. So the only two things that were helpful were telephone or wait until a migrant return home. Utilizing, even to collect the telephone numbers or contact address, we have to utilize multiple social network to obtain contact information. For example, CVFS regular household interview data collection, the existing information, about 30% of migrant has some kind of contact information. Then we launched this brief household revisit that gives us about 42% more information. Then we contacted their relatives, friends, their co-workers and manpower agencies in Nepal, that gives us another 3% contact information. We also talked to the migrant in the destination place, their social network, because usually migrant, they form ethnic or cultural groups when they go outside Nepal. So that helps. They gave us 3% more information. So we end up with no contact number with 22%. Okay, so the final picture was we have 20% expect to return within a year. 72% we have a telephone, and for 8% telephone or any kind of other information, and 8% we did not have anything, no information. We never knew whether they will return or not, and then we don't have any contact. Now, employing mixed method, multimode data collection, and state of the art of technology, crucial to maximize participation. Telephone interview for those who were not planning to return in near future. Interview people face to face for those who had no telephone or were planning to return. Migrant who returned but were living outside of Chitwan, and consider for both access to telephone technology as well as cost. Sometimes a few at that time, 2009, 2013, there was no internet-based telephone facility. So some of the landline telephone cost a lot. So we also need to be careful if that situation still exists. So next is how long you want to, how long you want to allow to collect the data. By 6 months, we were able to interview 77%, and we, allowed another 26 months, and we were able to do 91% interview. So that was, yeah, you can always weigh in whether you want to wait or you want to, depending on the nature or objective of your study. Next is exercising flexibility in data collection time. You can see that when you want to allocate the interviewer effort, most of them are, in the late afternoon. But that is absolutely for international migrants. It absolutely depends on which country they are in. For US, this 3 p.m., 4 p.m. time slots in Nepal would not work. But for Middle East and Gulf countries, that was more practical and more appropriate. A week of the days, again, this sample was, dominated with migrant in Gulf countries. So they have a Friday the weekend, and we are able to catch them in during Fridays, then more than any other days. So these, a Saturday was not a very good time, and the interviewer, we did not employ that many interviewers on Saturday too. Next, flexibility. We also we did not give up, although close to 40% were one contact. We have about 30% with 2 contacts, and then 15% with 3 contacts, and there were few people who we have to keep working on them. Tailoring interview situation to fit with respondent background. Number 1, especially for migrants and international phone interviews, we need a very well trained and experienced interviewer. We also had the benefit of some of our interviewer personally knew the participant because they were participant in the earlier surveys, like 1997 and 2008 panel studies. For news respondent, interviewer gathered information from their household for gaining familiarity. So if the interviewer knows about their families and bring up can talk about their family with the migrants, they were very successful in interviewing that migrants. At that time, during 2009, 2013, there were very limited internet access, so phone access. So those migrants were very curious to talk to our interviewer to get information about their household in Nepal. So that made it very important to get some familiarity about their families in Nepal, so that they can talk about that during the interview or before the interview. The next is because they keep changing their residence and phone number or other contact information, we have to rely message from family member to the that is number one, and then we also need to relay message from family members to the respondent, which gives them more confident about the interview and interviewers. Understanding social norms and cultural context. Yes, this was again important. Most of the migrants were male, and it would have been sometime during the timing of interview and gender of the we need to be sensitive with the gender of the female or gender of the interviewer, so that we also respect the social norm and cultural context during the interview. Again, as I said, we had 77% interviewed within 6 months and 91% interviewed within the 26 months. And if you want to know more about this study, this is published in this paper, and you can take a look at that. Next, I would like to give a little more about the current situation, and I'm using a 2020 household registry data for this. Currently, about 39–40% household has at least one migrant, from the household, international migrants, and over 50% has domestic migrants, at least one domestic migrant. Percent of migration by migrants by destination. This is done based on the percent of total population. So it seems a little bit lower, but if we restrict that into the age group that are more likely to migrate, there is there is a huge out migration from our sample, and a lot of people are outside of Nepal. Next, this is a percent of international migration in CVFS sample by destination country. I put this chart simply because earlier our common wisdom was, Nepalese migrant or go to Gulf for labor migration, but here it shows that Australia is winning for other Gulf countries. Number one, if you go back 10–15 years, India would be the number one, but now India comes to the third. So the migration patterns are changing, and I just wanted to share that. And we have been getting this, or at least being able to measure this in a monthly basis. Okay. Unlike the 2009–2013 migration surveys, Now the new migration surveys. Now I'm talking survey that we conducted between 2018 and 2021. This is a more recent survey. This is yeah. Here I'm showing the change in mode of migrant data collection. Telephone interview has increased, and then the internet uh, online calling is increased a lot, and face-to-face is decreasing. But there is one caveat that we have not allowed that long time for 2021 survey. It was ended much shorter length than the 2018 survey. That might be one reason we are getting fewer cases face-to-face interview. But in both cases, yeah, the response rate was 89 in 2018 and 83 in 2021. So I think, yeah, we could still, mostly focus on telephone interview and still do the survey. Okay, so now I'm coming to end, but and give you some what CVFS migration data can offer. Number one is flexibility in conceptualizing or defining migration, because we have detailed data from household registry. You can define it by duration or destination or purpose of migration, and it captures the dynamic migration, like if somebody has a circular migration or long-term migration, or are these people going to the same place or different place? Are they coming back and going to the new place, or are they going from that place, the destination place, to the next destination place? So we have wonderful dynamic data. Financial and psychological measures, both in terms of remittance as well as their value beliefs and communication with or the household members in Nepal. So it has both a return migrant, and another part which I did not. There are two things I did not include in this presentation. Is number one is in migration, how much in migration there is into our sample from outside Nepal. And then other part is I did not mention here about the whole family migration. That is not a big, that is not a large proportion of our sample. So we have not, really investigated or analyzed or explored that process, but it is becoming more and more common, more particularly with internal migration. There are only 50 households, they were permanently moved out of Nepal, but other than, yeah, but there is a lot in internal migration that whole family moved to either outside of our sample neighborhoods. And last but not least, it has a huge opportunity to link those migration data to other existing community, household, and individual interview data, particularly the household relationship data. So you can investigate the consequences of migration to your spouse, consequences to your migration to your children, consequences to your migration to your elderly parents. So this gives a unique opportunity to investigate so many scientific questions. For more information about migration data and other data, please visit our website. And I think, yeah, that website is very informative. In addition to CVFS, we have been launching another very important study. it has its own unique feature. That is, we call, in short, we call it FAMLO, Family Migration and Early Life Outcomes. This is a cross-national comparative study of impact of family migration context on children outcomes. Children outcome basically focusing on children's socio-emotional competence across the early life course from middle childhood through the transition to adulthood. This study is in Mozambique, Mexico, and Nepal. And we have completed wave 1 data, and then we completed wave 2 data collection in Mexico and Mozambique. We are in the field in Nepal. This data will be available soon. Yeah, and would be a very interesting data set to have a comparative perspective. Within that project, we have another data collection that is called Reliam Augmentation of Family Migration and Early Life Outcomes. It is the same sample, but the main study is about family migration context. So they might be currently migrated, or they might have previously migrated, and this new the supplementary project is about the current migrants. So we interview the migrants while they were away during our study time. So the first one was focused on their attitude, values, beliefs, and their communication with family members in Nepal, and their political attitude, and some other several other domains. And then we repeated, or not repeated, but we partially repeated the first wave, and then added COVID data, COVID measures in the second wave that was collected in 2021. So for the Reliam data, both wave 1 and wave 2 are available in this website. And if you are interested, you can go visit that website. It is yeah, and take a look at those data. With that, I will stop here, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand, either your real hand or your virtual hand, or add it to the chat, please. Oh, have one in chat, Dirga.
Mm-hmm.
You check out the chat. There's a question.
No, there is a question.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Illegal migrant included in the study population. Did the interview migrant? Yeah, that was yeah. It came to during the data collection. I don't know how you define the illegal migrants. We did not ask their legal status when they were in destination, but our definition of migrant is if they are away from our sample neighborhood and somewhere else, either we some other countries, then we follow them and ask about their status and their experience in that country. We did not have a measure of whether they were legal or illegal. Any other questions? Oh, there's.
I was going to say, Durga, there's like a second part to that too, that question. Any migrants who face difficult situation?
Yes, migrant felt difficult situation. In our survey, basically, we did not ask the question in a way that we wanted to remind them their difficult situation, but what we ask is whether they have a paid employment in that place or not. If they have not have a paid employment, how long that has been, whether they have gone with a formal contract, whether they understand. I had a couple of copies of labor migrant contract that I asked I asked from the migrant, and then asked them whether they understand those term and condition, And absolutely not. They cannot even read and write in Nepali rather than in English. So yeah, yes, absolutely. We faced that, and there, but we did not investigate that in detail.
We have another question in the
Yep.
chat. Can you say more about trends in this data? And how do you deal with multiple reasons for migration?
Multiple reasons. Yes, I mean, there are sequential. Usually we didn't face the multiple response issue. The issue we face is they go, like, for example, if somebody from Nepal goes to Australia for a study study abroad visa or purpose, and then they stop their study and then started working. Yeah, that was sequential, but not when they leave. When they leave Nepal, what was their purpose of leaving Nepal? That's how we ask it, and we didn't face that multiple issue, except we later on when we have a repeated interview, then we got the difference, the discrepancy. Like the first time they said I went for a study, second time I am working here. So yeah. Okay. I see Scott and Jennifer. Do you want to add anything on the Pamela? If there is no questions, I think we may have little time.
I can answer some questions. I mean, Dirga, you did a good job describing Famelo. Other than it's in 3 countries. Wave 2, I mean, how's wave 2 going? Maybe you give us an update on wave 2 of Famelo in Nepal.
Yeah, wave 2 going very well. I think we have now a 77% response, and we are still working, and that is basically I mean, the not having contact information was the problem was doubled because of the COVID, because we could not go to the household and get new information. So yeah, we are working on those issues.
Well, and I think it's amazing how much you were all able to do in spite of COVID, and to add some information about children's well-being and migration being stalled perhaps because of COVID. So hopefully we will have some information about that as well, and presumably will be in CVFS also.
Yeah. There is another question about the health outcomes. Are you asking about health outcome of the migrants or any health outcomes? Yeah, Emily has a project. She is looking at how the parental migration affects children's health, both physical, and that's one. The other one is Sauharto Rai in University of Washington. He is looking at how the husband migration affects their wife's mental health. Those are the 2 studies that I can think of, but because CVFS allow you to link several members of the household, that allow you to look at the health outcome for different people. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Dirga, we also have the analysis on adolescent health outcomes.
Oh yeah.
We presented on that at PA last year.
Yeah, we presented it last year. Like we had how the household members migration affects adolescent health. Again, it was because CVFS has both. One study collects the data on adolescents, another study collects data on parent migration, household members migration. So we were able to link those and then analyze those data together.
Can I ask one more question, sort of follow up to that. Actually, this is on behalf of my wife, who just went to pick up our girls from the school. So to the migrants, do you also ask any questions about sort of the cultural practices? She wanted me to ask about menstruation behavior specifically, and if that's something that you collect from the migrants once they go abroad.
Yuvraj, Nepali migration is mostly male dominated.
Right.
It is 95%, 96% are male. So there are few female, but to be frank, we did not ask about menstruation. And we feel bad about we did not even ask for the adolescent back in home.
Great, thank you.
We still have a few more minutes, right?
Yep, we have about 5 minutes left if anyone has any last questions.
Hi, Deirdre.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Something Jen and I were talking about yesterday was, and I'm sorry I missed the first half of this, but that in Femelo and Realm, it's a different way of collecting migration status in terms of asking about trips, as opposed to what we've done in the registry so far, which is more about living arrangements and where people have been in a certain time interval, like a month or a 3-month period. And there's not really a question here, but we were talking about how that's different ways of conceptualizing migration and what it makes possible or not. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts on these different ways of collecting and conceptualizing migration in terms of changes in registry status, as opposed to focusing on discrete trips and collecting information about them.
I think it depends on the objective. Like as I said, if you go to the western part of Nepal, those are almost 90% are seasonal migration. They go to India to plant potatoes, and they leave for certain days. I think for that we need household detailed data like household registry. But even in Pamela, I think we have a duration, right? How long they have been away. So I think we should be able to create a comparable measures between those two, and might be useful. But what is important is the sequence of migration. Do they go to Gulf first, and then from Gulf they go to Europe, right? And that we have in both data sets, or they go to Gulf every time. I think there is a clear difference between those two types of migrants. So yeah, and both data set gives you that. Okay.
I had maybe a follow-up question on that. If you can hear me okay, I'm in a shared office, so I have to wear a mask.
Okay, yeah.
On the trip duration. So I think you mentioned like about 20% of migrants come back within a year. But for those who are abroad for longer than a year, do you see any patterns in terms of like how many years they're abroad because of like labor contracts? Or is it kind of a wide range of time duration?
No, there is this 2-year contract period if they keep, and it was very strictly followed earlier part of the I think 95 to up to 2005. Then they started making changes in their regulation, and they can renew that at that destination country. That is messing up a little bit of that trend, but other than that, yes, for labor migration to Gulf, particularly Gulf, because it is easy to it is close to the origin place. There is this condition of 2 years that made that trend, but now it is a little bit mixing up.
Thank you.
For coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Durga, for giving this one. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us.
Thank you.